What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence Adjah here with another episode of Required Reading. Now, this week we have three articles, and the first one is particularly heavy and sobering. I want to send up a prayer to Keyontae Johnson, a young brother who plays for the University of Florida who collapsed in a recent game, and now is currently in a mentally induced coma. And it kind of leads from this first article, but the article obviously is born out of that incident that took place actually during the game. Is very, very scary. And if you kind of follow me on social media, you see that I've posted this. And this draws on this article from Carolyn Barber in Fortune magazine. It says, with COVID raging, why are we even still playing college basketball? We all know the answer. I think for many people, it's not only the desire of the athletes to want to play, but it's also the economic implications of basketball and NFL and the football not happening. But the thing that was so striking about this article and why you should read it is that it talks about the incident, the scary link between what is likely what is to be going on with Keyontae Johnson, one who actually tested positive COVID. A number of the University of Florida athletes have tested positive for that in August, and then actually losing sudden consciousness in an actual basketball game. Now, one of the things that they kind of talk about is how likely it is, on top of that, this common condition that you're finding in 1 in 3 athletes who actually had gone through and had actually tested positive for COVID, myocarditis, which is the inflammation of the heart muscle. I'm not a cardiologist, but let's suffice it to say that it strongly impacts your ability to pump blood into the bloodstream from the heart. It also can be leading also could lead into kind of sudden loss of consciousness, which you can actually find, which is based on the thickening of the heart. I'm not going to get all into that. What I am saying is that you should read the article and it breaks it down. And the fact that 1 in 3 athletes who have actually tested positive, even 10 weeks, months after testing positive and recovering, have evidence 1 in 3 of damage to the heart, let alone the incidences of lungs. This is why this Keyontae Johnson thing is so heavy. Number one, that is he's a young man, young boy, his life. But is this now the sacrificial lamb, as we talked about before when we talked about this article? Are our children, are our young men and women now the sacrificial lambs for a economic model for a league? Because quite frankly, at the end of the day, if they find out, let's please, Lord forbid, I pray that he's able to make it through this. I pray he's able to. But if God forbid we lose another young man or young woman because of this, there has to be liability. There has to be liability put to do with the universities and the conferences because of this. Because we've seen the effects, and we're still in one of the most high contact. And here's the thing: at the end of the day, man, as somebody who loves college basketball, who was a Division 1 college athlete, I certainly understand, especially that desire. I also understand as someone who enjoys watching college basketball. I love it. I absolutely love it. But there's something sinister about our entertainment, and what we're willing to risk in order to have it. And so my hope, my prayer is that Keyontae Johnson, prayers up for you, praying for the entire community, and praying for the young men and women who Florida State who actually witnessed that. We're praying for you to pull through. But I pray that anyone who is who reads this article, you really see why this is unsettling, why the incentives are not fully aligned to protect our student athletes in the best way possible. And so I think that this may even have implications in terms of even how the NBA may be rethinking things, because they did an exceptional job, which we covered on a required reading, with their protocol. But if we see more and more of these things come on, we pray that's not the case. My sense is that I think people will finally wake up and actually do something, or at least put a stop to this until it is really, really safe enough for people to resume activity. So again, first article by Carolyn Barber in Fortune magazine, with COVID raging, why are we still playing college basketball? So the first article. Second article, Caught in the System, by our sister Sydney Madden and Rodney Carmichael. This was a dope story that captured the story of our late great Nipsey Hussle, and it kind of drew a correlation to his life and how just the nature of surveillance in Los Angeles of the police and the brothers in the inner city, brothers and sisters in the inner city, essentially facilitates a pipeline for them kind of ending up kind of replicating this tragic story that we have of the life of Nipsey Hussle and this short life. Obviously, I think people, if you're not familiar with him, is amazing hip hop artist who was gone too soon last year, last March, gunned down in the same neighborhood that he was lifting up, the same community that he was lifting up and investing in that he came from, and an unfortunate death. But his story to kind of get there mimics so many other stories. And I think Sidney Madden and Rodney Carmichael just did an amazing job kind of capturing a life of someone who actually had an intersection of life and a kind of intersection, whose life kind of overlapped with Nipsey's, and who there was mutual respect and honor because of their stories. Not just because of similar gang affiliation, but just because of their stories. And how just because of that surveillance, because of that, you're almost priming young men and young women to essentially fall into these situations. And so I think this is helpful because I think this goes beyond the surface understanding of the impact Nipsey had, but ultimately what type of system that he was caught up in. His story reflects so many, and he happened to be fortunate. He happened to be very fortunate, and gifted, and other minded and community minded enough to kind of have this kind of real moment when he went home to Eritrea and coming back and really wanting to pour into community. But the people he was pouring into were these people who are quite not necessarily being well served by the system. I think we understand the socioeconomic factors and all things that go on, but even if you put that aside, the system of policing and surveillance of these young men and women kind of leaves them, and the type of policies that are in place for those in probation leaves them in very, 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 very compromising situations, which kind of leaves them, that kind of helps people understand why seeing stories about this are far too common. This is far too common. So again, caught in the system, Nipsey Hussle, the LAPD, in the inescapable trap of gang affiliation. I think that's the other point here. I think people have read enough or heard enough stories about what is the allure, but when you actually hear and see how Sidney and Rodney illustrate not only the context and the circumstances, but the universal human need that these young men and women are looking for and how that's fulfilled in this gang, you get a better understanding and a better ability to empathize. And so I think this is a great, great article. Again, it was in the December 12th NPR Music, Caught in the System, Nipsey Hussle, LAPD, and the Inescapable Trap of Gang Affiliation. Now, the last article, you probably like, well, why are you reading anything from UNC? You know what I'm saying? I'm not a UNC Tar Heel, but I find myself, reading about how a lot of how COVID has impacted schools. Enrollment has gone down, revenue's gone down, and what are many institutions of higher education doing to address this? And I think in doing that search, I came across an op-ed by the Daily Tar Heel, which is, I think, it's a student newspaper, and they talk about UNC should cut from the top. Now, here's why this article is important. I think this kind of talks to a issue that is beyond universities, but I think it's most companies and organizations where you hear about record profits, heavy bonuses, and then ultimately being heavy, pretty significant recipients of PPE, and then such bold layoffs. It kind of just pushes you to wonder, like, wait, how does that happen? How are we running the numbers? How do you still capture that amount of profit? Why isn't there a priority to keep the people? And if there is anything, there's an outsized return that many of the people leading these organizations are receiving. If anybody if anybody is not in a position, right, to or anybody who is in a position to take cuts, it should be them versus those who will lose their job. And I think if this anything, I think the reason why this is great is that this is the picture of our country. Think about just, how resources are distributed. This is just a microcosm of what we see at scale. And so that's why I think this is good. As op-ed, UNC should cut from the top. You hear them making a case to say, wait, why should you do such massive layoffs and large budget cuts, right? Why don't you start from the top? And the great thing, what I loved about them is that they kind of gave a kind of a picture of the chancellor's department and kind of the Department of Communications. And they said, wait, this wasn't even around 7 years ago. Two, you guys have the highest salaries. And three, your effectiveness and outcomes have not been good, right? Like communications haven't improved yet. And still, this is not the place where we're going to be seeing the cuts. This is not the place where we're seeing the salary cuts and the layoffs. We're going to see it from so many of other more integral parts of the university. And so it begs the question, man, like if at a university level, this is the type of thinking and approach to budget cuts, then you're not so surprised when you look at a country. There are these fights just from a legislative perspective when you talk about relief from coronavirus and the pandemic and fighting about where priority should go. This gives you a picture. This is a university where there is now limited resources, yet and still we're looking at this. Now, again, on an absolute basis, I don't want people to get so caught up in the specific numbers and the specific salaries, but just where are the priorities and the cuts happening. And so I thought it was a helpful article for people to read, because I think that this type of thinking, the type of angst and frustration that you hear from the students in this op-ed points to the frustration that I think many people hear from citizens of this country when we're sitting where we are, and the frustration that's coming. And now you actually hear about shutdowns again, and I can understand why people are frustrated. There's no relief being given. There are people who are still being able to benefit from these big companies and organizations that are benefiting from being supported, right? Well, but these people are not given no outlet to be able to generate income. I can understand that, but just look at this university. And just look at where the prioritization is happening. And again, I don't need to just pick on UNC. I think that this is what's taking place across the board. And so again, this is just to give a picture. This is not to poke at UNC, because I'm pretty sure I got a lot of Tar Heel friends and people who are going to get on me for this. But I do think it gives us a picture of some of the issues that we have in the country and in the world. And so again, these are 3 articles for required reading, one from NPR Music, Fortune Magazine, as well as the Daily Tar Heel. But I'm hopeful that you find them, edifying. You learn something different. But ultimately, I welcome your comments, thoughts. Let me know what you thought. And if you come across an article that you believe that everybody should read, as always, send me a note. Take care, y'all.